40 feet above Topaz Road, a young bobcat remained frozen in terror at top a utility pole surrounded by live wires, carrying enough electricity to kill in an instant. The animal grew weaker from dehydration and fear. He had been trapped there for 2 days, slowly dying from dehydration and exhaustion. Word rippled down Topaz Road. Neighbors stepped out with binoculars, their faces filled with worry. One wrong move, one slip, one desperate attempt to escape, and the magnificent creature would be gone. What follows is an extraordinary race against time. A story of how ordinary citizens, emergency services, and wildlife experts launched a complex and dangerous operation. Could they save that fragile life before it's too late? Before we start, hit the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new source. The autumn sun hung low over Dona Ana County, casting long shadows across Topaz Road when Elena Garcia first spotted something that made her heart clench. She had lived in this quiet corner of New Mexico for 32 years, raised 3 children in the adobe-style house with the blue trim, and knew every cottonwood, tree, and creosote bush along her street. But the silhouette perched high on the electrical pole at the corner that was new and terribly wrong. Elena squinted against the glare, her hand rising to shield her eyes. The shape was too large for a hawk, too compact for a turkey vulture. As the creature shifted, autumn light caught golden-brown fur marked with distinctive dark spots and bars. A bobcat, and it was trapped among the power lines, crouched on the crossbar between live electrical conductors that hummed with enough voltage to kill. Dios mio, Elena whispered, her pulse quickening. She had seen bobcats before, of course. Glimpses of tawny shadows slipping through the AOs at dusk, paw prints in the dust near her chicken coop. But never like this. Never frozen in terror 40 feet above the ground, surrounded by death on every side. Elena hurried back inside and grabbed her phone, her fingers trembling slightly as she dialed Ruth Chavez. It lived 3 houses down. Ruth answered on the second ring, her warm voice immediately turning concerned as Elena explained what she had found. "I'll be right there," Ruth said. "And I'm calling Jorge." Within 15 minutes, a small cluster of neighbors had gathered on Topaz Road, keeping a respectful distance from the pole. Jorge Molina arrived with binoculars, and through the lenses, the situation became devastatingly clear. The bobcat was a young adult, probably 2 or 3 years old, with tufted ears pressed flat against its skull in fear. Its pupils were dilated to black pools, and every muscle in its compact body was rigid with tension. "How long has it been up there?" Fred asked quietly, lowering the binoculars. "I don't know," Elena admitted. "I only just noticed it." But she paused, thinking. "Yesterday evening I heard some commotion, yowling like fighting cats. I thought it was strays, and the Henderson's dogs had been going crazy for 2 days, barking at something." Ruth pressed her lips together. 2 days? That poor creature has been up there for 2 days. The knowledge settled over them like 2 days without water in the dry New Mexico heat. 2 days balanced on a narrow beam, afraid to move, surrounded by wires carrying 7,200 volts. Enough electricity to stop a heart in an instant. Bobcats were resilient, adapted to harsh desert conditions. But this was different. This was a slow torture of fear, dehydration, and exhaustion. Elena pulled out her phone again. "Calling the county and the electric company. Everyone I can think of." The calls began. Elena reached the Dona Ana County offices and was transferred 3 times before connecting with someone in emergency services. She described the situation, trying to keep her voice steady, explaining that a wild animal was trapped on live electrical equipment and had been there for at least 2 days. The person on the other end promised to escalate the issue and get back to her. Jorge called El Paso Electric Company, navigating through automated menus until he reached a dispatcher who took down the pole number and location. "We'll send someone to assess," the dispatcher said, but there was no urgency in the voice, no recognition of the crisis unfolding. Ruth contacted the New Mexico Department of Game and Fish, and here, finally, they found someone who understood. The officer on duty asked detailed questions. How high was the bobcat? Was it showing signs of injury? Could it climb down on its own? Looked up at the pole at the terrified animal frozen in place. "No," she said softly. "It's too scared to move. And even if it tried, it could touch the wires. Needs help. We'll send someone," the officer assured her. "But we'll need the power shut off before we can do anything. This is going to require coordination." As the afternoon wore on, more neighbors emerged from their homes. Word spread through the small community with the speed of concern. Lydia Perez, a grandmother who had lived on Topaz Road since before the street was paved, brought a folding chair and settled in to keep watch. Her grandson, Mateo, home from high school with chalk dust still on his fingers from art class, stood beside her, his young face etched with worry. "Can't we throw it some food?" Jorge shook his head gently. "We can't get close enough without risking our own safety. And if we startle it, it might move and touch the wires." The boy's jaw tightened. "So we just watch it suffer." "We watch," Lydia said, placing a weathered hand on her grandson's arm. "Witness. And we make sure help comes." By late afternoon, as shadows lengthened and the temperature began to drop, Elena received a call from Fernando Msaz, the Dona Ana County manager. His voice was grave but determined. "Mrs. Garcia, I've been briefed on the situation. I want you to know we're treating this as an ongoing public safety concern, both for the animal and for residents. We're coordinating with Game and Fish and El Paso Electric. It's going to require a multi-agency response, but we're committed to resolving it safely." Elena felt tears prick her eyes. "Thank you," she managed. "That animal has been suffering up there. We couldn't just leave it." "No," Meshes agreed. "We couldn't." The machinery of rescue began to move. County staff made calls. El Paso Electric dispatched engineers to assess the situation and determine what would be required to safely de-energize the plants. Game and Fish coordinated equipment and personnel. What might have taken days of bureaucratic back and forth was compressed into hours because people chose to act with urgency. At 4:30 p.m., Elena's phone rang again. It was a representative from El Paso Electric Company with news. "We've reviewed the situation and we're prepared to de-energize the immediate area after 5 p.m. today." The representative explained, "This will create a temporary power outage affecting approximately 42 customers in your neighborhood, but it's necessary to ensure everyone's safety during the rescue operation." "How long will the power be out?" Elena. "We estimate less than an hour. Power should be restored by 5:45 p.m., but the rescue window will be brief. We'll need everyone to work quickly once the lines are dead." Elena agreed immediately and called Ruth and Jorge with the update. The three of them then helped county staff spread the word. The Dona Ana County MVRD 911 Center pushed alerts through social Media and emergency notification. Channels. Elena's phone pinged with the official message and she saw neighbors checking their own devices, nodding and understanding. By 4:45 p.m., Topaz Road had transformed into a staging area. A bucket truck from the county's facilities and parks department rumbled to a stop near the pole. Its massive boom folded down like a sleeping crane. Two men emerged, Andy Segoya and Victor Aranga, both experienced operators who had worked on countless county projects, but never anything quite like this. Behind them, a white pickup with the Game and Fish logo pulled up, and Sergeant Chris Ortega stepped out carrying a specialized rescue pole with a snare loop at the small crowd of neighbors had grown. People stood in clusters on lawns and driveways speaking in hushed voices, all eyes turning upward to the bobcat that had become their collective responsibility. The animal remained motionless, conserving energy, but its sides heaved. With rapid breathing, dehydration was setting in. Time was running short. Ortega approached Elena, Ruth, and Jorge, introducing himself with a quiet professionalism that inspired confidence. He had responded to hundreds of wildlife calls in his career: bears in dumpsters, mountain lions near schools, elk tangled in fences. But this, he admitted, was unique. The challenge, he explained, is that bobcats are incredibly strong and agile. When panicked, once I get the snare around it, there's going to be a struggle. It's going to fight. The last thing we want is for it to break free and fall or make contact with the wires before we have it secure. What are its chances? Ruth asked. The question everyone was thinking. Ortega looked up at the pole, measuring distances and angles with experienced. If we work quickly and everything goes according to plan, good. The animal is stressed and dehydrated, but bobcats are. Once we get it down safely, we'll do a quick health assessment and then transport it to a release site far from human development. At 5 p.m., the El Paso electric crew made the final checks. The supervisor confirmed that all downstream circuits were isolated and the equipment was ready. He raised his radio and gave the command. The hum that had been a constant background presence along Topaz Road for decades, that invisible vibration of electricity flowing through copper and aluminum, fell silent. Up and down the street, porch lights winked out. Air conditioning units stopped their endless cycling and refrigerators ceased their mechanical humming. 42 homes went dark, but every single resident understood why, and not one complained. Andy Segoya climbed into the bucket of the truck and Victor Aranga took position at the controls. Ortega secured his equipment and stepped into the bucket beside Andy. The rescue pole held carefully. The boom began its slow groaning ascent, extending upward with hydraulic precision. 40 feet the bucket swayed slightly in the evening breeze. Elena gripped the chain-link fence at the edge of the property, her knuckles. Ruth stood beside her, one hand pressed to her chest. Jorge had his arm around Lydia's shoulders while Mateo stood rigid, barely breathing. All along the street, people watched in tense silence. As the bucket approached, the bobcat finally moved. Its head swiveled, ears pricked forward, and a low growl rumbled from its throat, a sound of pure, primal fear. It shifted on the crossbar, muscles bunching. Ortega murmured, though the animal couldn't understand the words. Easy now.